This is Kofi Time.
The young people can make a difference. You can decide to participate in politics. You have the vote. You have the right to use to make your voices heard. And not only should you participate, you can also lead. I've often said that one is never too young to lead, and we are not too old to learn. I'm always learning.
20 years ago, Kofi Annan was awarded, together with the United Nations, the Nobel Peace Prize. Regarded as one of the modern world's icons of diplomacy, what's his legacy today? How can we prepare for tomorrow based on his vision for a better world? Hello, I'm Ahmad Fawzi, and I had the pleasure and privilege of working with Kofi Annan, accompanying him on many missions around the world as one of his spokespersons and communication advisor. Today we will discuss the role of young people in the prevention of conflict and their role in peacemaking and in peacebuilding. Over half of the world's population is under the age of 30. Young people have been badly hit by recent global turmoil. They are disproportionately affected by conflict, by climate change, unemployment. Yet they are connected, knowledgeable, they're driven, and have a lot to offer. How did Kofi Annan connect with young people? And what would he do today to make sure they have a voice? To answer this question, and much more, I hope, I'm very pleased to welcome Hajer Sharief and Jeremy Gilley on this podcast today. Hajer, you're a human rights advocate from Libya, and you're the co-founder of Together We Build It. You're a member of the Extremely Together initiative of the Kofi Annan Foundation. Hajer promotes the participation of women and youth in peace-building efforts in Libya. The UN Secretary-General selected Hajer to serve as a member of the advisory group of experts for the Progress Study on Youth, Peace and Security, which was mandated by the United Nations Security Council. Jeremy, you're British, you're a filmmaker, and you're the founder of the non-profit organization Peace One Day. You're passionate about peace, and I can attest to that myself. Your passion is contagious. In 2001, as a result of Jeremy's efforts, UN member states unanimously adopted a General Assembly resolution establishing a fixed date in the UN calendar, the 21st of September, to be called the International Day of Peace. Peace Day, an annual day of ceasefire and non-violence. Jeremy's goal for 2025 is to reach 3 billion people with the message of Peace Day. Hajer, I'd like to come to you first, if I may. When I traveled with Kofi Annan, I was always struck by the easy rapport he could establish with young people. As head of his foundation, the Kofi Annan Foundation, he attended, for example, many One Young World summits. Hajer, can you tell us how you met Kofi Annan, what your first impressions were, and what is the Extremely Together initiative, which he launched in 2016?
Of course, Ahmed, and this is one of my favorite questions when people ask me how did I meet Kofi and when, because I always love telling the story over and over again. The first time I met Kofi Annan was actually on the 12th of April 2016, and that was during Extremely Together's inception meeting in Geneva, Switzerland. And the first time you meet Kofi, you sort of go into the meeting with some expectation. And I must say, he really exceeded those expectations in the sense that, I grew up watching Kofi on on the TV the whole time during his time as the Secretary General. So there is that image of Kofi Annan. But then when you meet him in person, you see that image becoming live. And I think one of the first things that struck me the most during that first meeting is that it was quite obvious that he walks into the room knowing who we are, meaning that he's done his research. He took the time to get to know us, know our work, where we come from, even before meeting us. And as you can imagine, Ahmed and also Jeremy, in our work, you get to meet a lot of decision makers, the senior officials, and so on. And it's very rare to meet one of these people where you feel that they really took the time to prepare themselves for this meeting or for meeting you before doing so, in particular. And ever since, and this is something that I tell everyone who asks me about Kofi, is that it was quite obvious that for him, the cause of supporting young people was not just something. It was obvious that he truly believed in young people and that he treated us with respect and he treated us as his real counterpart. You know, not as, oh, you're a cute a group of young people, do this and do that. Because I even remember whenever we asked him questions, he answered us with a very honest answer. Um, and for that, of course, I'm forever grateful. And then, of course, Extremely Together is a global youth-led initiative that he launched with the Kofi Annan Foundation in 2016 that I had the honor and the privilege to be part of. And Extremely Together aims to empower young people to prevent violent extremism, more particularly by equipping young people with the tools and the knowledge, as well as reinforcing alternative narratives and positive values of togetherness, which is, of course, much needed in today's world.
Right. And I love the story, Hajer. He was, of course, quite connected to the young people. And as he said at the beginning of this podcast, in the excerpt we played, you're never too young to lead, and one is never too old to learn. He said, I'm always learning. And he did his homework, which was fantastic. Yeah, I love that story. Thank you. Young people under 30 make up just over 2.6% of the world's parliamentarians, 25% or less of the world's houses of parliament have no MPs, members of parliament, aged under 30 at all. Kofi Annan was very concerned that young people were often, very often, excluded from the decision making process. Listen to this.
The energy, ambition, and capability of young people are among society's greatest assets. You have so much to offer, and yet you are often marginalized from the discussions and decisions that affect your lives and will frame your futures.
Hajer, what more can we do to overcome systemic barriers to youth participation?
Ahmed, in order to answer this question, it's also important to recognize part of the issue itself or part of the problem itself, which is related to an age restriction or an age requirement. For an example, in politics, although you see many people in many countries encouraging young people to become politically active, but there are systemic obstacles that could even be in the form of age requirements that does not allow young people to participate, or it sort of puts young people on hold for many years of their life. And then suddenly, for example, they turn 18 and they expect them to immediately go and become active in politics, go voting, but also later on expect them that they're going to immediately be activated and start running for offices and so on. And it's very important to recognize that while, of course, there should be an age requirement for participating in politics, but I feel that the requirement when it comes to age that we have right now, um, there isn't really much of an assessment of why we have this particular age requirement, right? So, for example, in some countries, you cannot run for an office unless you are 40 years old or 35 years old. What is the rationale behind this age requirement? But then there is also the fact that some leadership positions as well that requires decision-making skills do have a requirement that you need to have, let's say, minimum 10 years of experience in order for you to participate. And when you say 10 years of experience to someone who is young, you're by default disqualifying this individual. It's important to think of the what, which in my opinion, Kofi Annan understood very well. The what, which is being that young people are equal members in the society. As such, we need to ensure that they can equally participate, similar as any other member of the society.
Yes, thank you, Hajer. Some very sensible suggestions, Hajer. Next question is for you, Jeremy. In the last 10 years, we've seen a return to conflict, violent demonstrations everywhere, political instability in many, many places. Today, 1 in 4 young people lives in a setting affected by armed conflict or by organized violence. Many, however, are choosing peace. Many are working actively to promote tolerance, to promote dialogue and social cohesion. You've chosen, Jeremy, to highlight the work of extraordinary young people through the events and the amazing campaigns you've been organizing for the past 20 years. Can you tell us first, that's the same question I asked Hajer, when and how you met Kofi Annan, and how he inspired you in your work, how he was influential in how you thought and did what you did then and now?
Yes. Well, thank you, Ahmed, and wonderful to hear Hajer's words. We're very, very proud to have worked with her for Space Transformers. Such an incredible, inspiring journey you've had, and I feel very honoured and privileged to be on this show with you. So I met Kofi Annan. Well, obviously at the beginning of the journey that I went on, and all that journey, I had the idea to try and create a day of peace with a fixed calendar date. The story of the Day of Peace and its history and the whole journey can be seen in the film The Day After Peace, which of course Kofi Annan is in on the Peace One Day YouTube channel. But it started, Ahmed, by me meeting a man called Kieran Prendergast, who of course you knew well, who was the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs at the time that Kofi Annan was the Secretary General. And that brought us together. We wanted to, have access. We wanted to meet people around the world. We wanted to speak to humanitarian agencies. And the only way that we were going to be able to do that and have the full support of the United Nations to establish, the UN International Day of Peace, to have a fixed calendar date and to be known as a day of ceasefire and non-violence, would of course be if the Secretary General of the United Nations would be behind it, would give his blessing, would, share his desire and passion to see it created. And after a lot of hard work with yourself and Kieran and many others who were there at the time, of course, I had that moment to meet him and to tell him the story in the hope that he would, give it his blessing. And if that were to happen, then obviously the road to establishing the Peace Day with a fixed calendar date would have that much more of a chance. Of course, it was going to require 2 member states to put it forward to sponsor, co-sponsor, and then hopefully have the support of all of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And I remember it all so well, being at UN headquarters and going up in the lift and just, I don't know, like I felt like I was going to heaven or something. Well. So yeah, I just remember seeing it happen in those wonderful UN lifts, and I was just so excited about it. I sort of sat there and waiting for him to come in, and he came in and sat next to me, and he wore a sort of like a manacle like this, and I remember saying to him, "Oh, that's really beautiful."
It's the key of life. He bought it in Egypt when he was serving there in Ismailia, when he started his UN career.
Wow, he wore the key of life on his arm. Well, there you go. And I remember commenting on it, and he commented back, and that sort of the journey began like that. And then I asked him a series of questions about creating the day and would we have his support, and of course he gave his support, and from that moment onwards everything changed. He actually said some words that I've actually never forgotten. It was that individuals can make a difference, and if each of us collectively did our bit, we will make a major contribution. Individuals can make a difference, and if each of us does our bit, collectively we'll make a major contribution. And those words have sort of resonated, and I've remembered them. The idea that we just do our bit, work every day. I sort of think about him as the father of Peace Day, with the fixed calendar date, the day of ceasefire and non-violence. He was there from the very beginning. He opened the doors, and the day became a reality.
Yes. I do remember him saying this on more than one occasion: individuals can make a difference. And in a very sort of straightforward way, he was inspiring. As Hajer said, he would walk into a room well prepared, and a hush would fall onto the room, especially with his low voice, because you really were struggling to hear him. But that made everybody focus even more on the words he was saying, and he chose his words very carefully. I thank you for that memory, Jeremy. You've traveled around the world yourself, seeking to promote Peace Day, the International Day of Peace, 21 September. You've met many young peace activists. Were there one or two, apart from Hajer, of course, who impressed you in particular? What do you think is the most effective thing young people can do today in support of peace?
Young people have always been at the heart of our process. Providing them the tools to resolve the great issues that we face is fundamental to humanity's survival. So right from the very beginning, we were traveling to schools and speaking with young people and hearing their voices. And we've never, ever, ever stopped doing that for the 22 years. And in fact, have free education resources available for teachers and indeed for parents at peaceoneday.org. But I think that there's obviously some recent people that I've met in relation to the shows that we're producing at the moment. But I remember being in Somalia early on, in Badoa, chatting with a young person there, who I've absolutely never ever forgotten. He was in hospital and he'd taken a bullet in in the lower part of his leg, and he was 12 years old. And he was fighting, and I said to him, we were talking, and I'm like, have you been out there kind of killing? And he said, yeah, I have. And I just thought, my God, he's 12 years old. He's in hospital because he's taken a bullet, and he's also has been killing. And honestly, it was just unbelievable. It totally changed my life, and has really fueled me from that very moment to work as hard as I could. And so, it's a young person like that totally changed my sort of desire and passion and thirst to do the best I could for him and others. Two other people, though, you asked, and one of them is Mitzi Janelle Tan, who's a climate justice activist, a Global Choices Arctic Angel, and an activist for Fridays for Future out of the Philippines. Mitzi Janelle Tan is just amazing. You look at some of these young people who are out there on the front line, Ahmed, giving it absolutely everything, which is why, of course, we see this massive movement of young people being very involved. And people like Mitzi are really at the heart of that push. Another person is Susan Lee, who is at core delivery team for Global Assembly. It's people like this which will, after Hajer, of course, be the first woman Secretary General of the United Nations. Let's hope that happens. So basically, Susan and Mitzi, these are extraordinary women. There are many I could mention, but the new generation of activists that are coming through, they're using technology in an incredible way. They're mobilizing really well. Their voices are getting heard. They're sharing stories. They're inspiring each other. And we just have to work doubly hard to put narrative into the world, as indeed you are doing today on this show, that is constructive in the hope that it informs, inspires, and engages people to action. And everyone has to be involved. It's a critical time. So don't think that you can't make a difference. As Kofi Annan said, individuals can make a difference. And if each of us does our bit, collectively we'll make a major contribution.
I'm tempted to ask you what impressed you about Mitzi and Susan in particular. I mean, Mitzi was involved in climate. Was she extremely articulate, and did she actually take action that we should be emulating?
Yeah, I mean, both Mitzi and Susan, if you look at their social media accounts, Mitzi Janelle Tan and Susan Lee, if you look at their social media and look at what they're doing, obviously it's just day in, day out. But it's when you listen to them talk, I mean, it's just extraordinary and inspiring. I mean, incredibly intelligent and articulate and knowledgeable. And I just feel when I hear Mitzi or I hear Susan, I just know that I'm sort of listening to great young leaders of saving humanity. I mean, because that's really what we're talking about. When you look at these young people right now who really are on the front line, you are looking at the individuals who are going to impact the amount of time we're able to sustain ourselves on this planet. They are true warriors, as Hajer is. And it's an honor. It's an honor, right, Ahmed? To be able to speak with these people and tell their stories, which is what Peace One Way wants to do. Just tell other people's stories.
And you're very good at telling those stories, Jeremy. Thank you very much for doing so. And you mentioned social media, and I was going to ask you both a final question. Young people can be powerful agents for peace online to provide alternative narratives, alternative to the divisive content propagated by violent extremists on social media. Listen to this.
Use the energy, the creativity in you. You are the men and women of your times. You are connected, you are wired, you understand this world better than people my generation.
I'd like to ask you both the same question now. Start with Hajer, I think. If you had one message to those in power today, the politicians, the heads of state, the members of parliament, the heads of corporation or international organizations, what would you tell them about working with young people? Hajer?
Thank you, Ahmed. This is the most important question, I think, of our time right now. And I would tell them to implement and promote intergenerational co-leadership, to implement and promote intergenerational partnerships, to implement and promote intergenerational dialogues. Because while we are talking about the role that young people play, we're talking about the present, we're talking about the future, we're also talking about partnerships. We're talking about doing it together. And this is something that young people are very good at. We are very good at doing things together. And we want to do things together. We're not saying that it's either young people or others. We're saying that we want to be part of today.
Fantastic. So implement, if I got this correctly, implement and promote intergenerational leaderships, intergenerational partnerships, and intergenerational dialogues.
Absolutely. In one word, it would be do it the Kofi Annan way.
Yes, don't exclude anyone, especially the young. And Jeremy, what would you tell these leaders of corporations, of governments, of countries? What would you tell them about working with young people?
I think I just encourage them to put it very, very high on their agenda that, they've got to listen to the voices of young people, work with young people, invite them into their offices. I mean, hear them, listen to them. I mean, they're speaking very loudly. And I think in many ways, Ahmed, governments and large corporations are listening to those young people because you have no choice. It's a little bit like the corporate changes that are occurring at the moment. Those who don't put purpose and values very high up on their priorities and take part in this paradigm shift that is occurring, those who don't do it will be left behind. And I think that I hope that's the case for governments as well, that they take it very seriously. I think they have to. I think the thing that I'd also say to governments and to corporations, particularly governments, of course, is within the education, the education that they provide to young people, is to really give them the tools that they need in order to face the great challenges that our planet faces at this point. So equipping young people with the skills that are required with today's challenges are really important. I don't see how we can save humanity and our time here on this planet if we don't equip young people.
And that's a great answer as well, Jeremy, from you and Hajer. There's a lot to digest here. Listen to the voices, education, give them the tools and the skills they need to face today's challenges. Hajer, Jeremy, we could go on forever. Your enthusiasm, your energy is inspiring and it's contagious. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your stories with us and for helping us understand better what Kofi Annan meant when he said that we have to give the young the opportunity to lead. To understand better how Kofi Annan worked with young people so easily and developed a rapport. And I remember, Hajer, you said at a ceremony in Geneva, I'll never forget that phrase. We were celebrating his life after he passed, and you said, Kofi Annan is not the past. Kofi Annan is the future. Thank you both very much. You've been listening to Kofi Time. Wherever you are, please share the values that Kofi Annan represented that you think are relevant today using #Kofi Time. Kofi Time is brought to you by the Kofi Annan Foundation and the United Nations Information Service in Geneva, produced by Gianluca Alaria. Join me again for the next episode of Kofi Time.